Trauma, a psychological and emotional response to an overwhelming, distressing, or dangerous event that can significantly disrupt a person's sense of safety, well-being, and daily fun. Bro, that's shitbox TV. You know what? Fuck it. It can happen in many ways, but in this case we are strictly talking about shows. Y'all remember late at night when you were watching your favorite cartoon or show, happy as can be, thinking the world is all peaches and cream, until something in that show pops up that isn't supposed to cause a reaction out of you, but even then makes you feel a bit uneasy or eerie, something that has a sort of uncanny feel to it. You stare at it for a few seconds until the scene finishes or the show ends. Damn, that show was ass, bro. After, you get up feeling paranoid and walk yourself to bed, still having the image of whatever you saw plastered inside your mind. When you go to watch the show again, you can't help but think about what you saw, as it keeps lingering on and on in your head, well, forever. I can confidently say that this has happened to a majority of people watching this video right now, because it has also happened to me multiple times, especially with this goofy show right here. Thanks, HBO. Crashbox was aired on HBO Family from the year 1999 to the great and grand year of 2000. Yeah, it was only around for a year or so, but hey, it still managed to traumatize a whole generation. Thank you, Iman Harrington and John Watkins, the creator of the show. Looking back at it, Crashbox was incredibly creative as a show. It was an educational stop-motion cartoon that centered itself around non-linear, game-like skits that taught kids a wide array of subjects such as math, history, science, and spelling. The whole stylistic design... Okay, this is getting way too straining on my eyes. You know what? We're gonna change up the effects a bit. Let's see what we got. Nope, not that one. No, definitely not that one. Maybe. Alright, this one is it. We're gonna stick with that. Maybe we'll come back to the previous one, but I don't know. Alright, from the top. The whole stylistic design of Crashbox was intriguing and imaginative since it took place inside of this computer that was controlled by tiny robots and was oozing with artfulness and originality with every new sketch. Since I'm not that old, I used to watch reruns of the show when it was on, and I liked it, for the most part. Some of the character models and set designs made me feel off as a kid. For example, the news anchor model in the skit Distraction News, and the set design in the game Mugshots, which, side note here, but something that I find really funny looking back at this, is that in this skit, they used to give the suspects ridiculous stats, like Sam Spit here, who apparently weighs 200 pounds at a staggering 7'5". But back to what I was saying, one of the games that gave me nightmares as a kid because of both the character models and the set design was none other than the man himself, Revolting Slob. Looking at it now, yeah, it's funny seeing this morbidly obese, disgusting man ramble like Crazy Dave, having a grammar and spelling skit out of all of them, and me and my friends even make jokes about bro. But back then, the mere sight of him made me quiver in my boots. Him and his environment gave me great paranoia, like maybe he was living right next to me and would come into my house when I wasn't looking, as if this thing could get airborne. It felt as if a cosmic rift would open up and the first depiction of a Reddit and Discord mod would come through and gobble me up like a Twix bar. As a kid, I kept looking around as if Mr. Slob was gonna jump scare me at any moment with his deplorable ass. I just knew that it smelled like a 5 no artificial sweeteners pack of booty in his room. Speaking of said room, I always wondered what the rest of his house looked like, which the thought of gave me goose pimples and made me feel even more unsettled. The sounds he would make were abnormal and odd, as if he was in pain or just some sort of monster. When he just spontaneously combusted in that one episode, it also made me scared and unnerved. Now that scene makes me laugh as much as watching an episode of The Biggest Loser, but damn did it scare me as a tiny homunculus. Just the overall vibe of this sketch engraved itself upon me, and where I would never forget the face, sound, and smell of the Revolting Slob. To be fair, bro is a trendsetter since now we got people like Asmongold to carry the torch and live up to the name. The Magic School Bus was the show that every elementary school teacher put on when it was a rainy day or just one of those days, and every student loved it. It taught us so much about everything in such a unique way. Miss Frizzle was the type of teacher we wish we had, and every field trip that she took her students on made us think, damn, maybe going to the zoo and seeing the mongoose for the 5th time this year isn't cool after all. But even if the adventures were cool, there was one in particular that stuck with me forever. The show ran for 52 episodes across 4 seasons, but funny enough, the episode that made me rethink everything about the show going forward was the first episode of the first season. The Magic School Bus Get Lost in Space. Basically, Arnold's goofy ass and insufferable cousin Janet brags to the class that she doesn't even take/know about her knowledge and accomplishments. Then the goat Miss Frizzle comes in with a snazzy ass outfit and tells everyone that it's field trip time. The school bus turns into a spaceship and boom, they are now in space taking a tour through every planet in the solar system. Yada yada yada, they finally make it to Pluto when it was officially instated in planet society and not ostracized for being the size of Billy Mitchell from Pixels.
Oh, boo yourselves! I'm Garrett Bobby Ferguson.
But along the ride, Janet's annoying, despicable, and absolutely deplorable ass fills their bus with so much stuff that there is no room for the students to get on after they explore Pluto. The bus explodes and then Janet's stuff gets all dumped out. She stands on business and says that she won't leave without it because no one will believe that she went to space. Okay, so now this is where the scene that scared me comes in. And just like the revolting slob, it makes me burst out laughing now. So Arnold gets pissed off with his cousin for wanting proof of them going into space that he says, and I quote, "Janet, you want proof? I'll give you proof. Here's proof of what'll happen to you if you stay here with your stuff."
Yo! Yo, holy shit, he dead!
And the best part about it is that after they get back, it cuts to him blowing his dusty ass nose with a tissue because he got the common cold. Bro, how are you not 6 feet under? As a kid, I had some understanding of what would happen to you if you took off your helmet in space. Shout out to the game Dumb Ways to Die, but seeing this made me rethink everything I knew about childhood cartoons because Jeepers Creepers, by golly, twiddle me silly and call me Ron, I was lost for words. I thought that I just saw a 4th grader unalive themselves just to prove a point. And the way his head froze with you still being able to see the glasses, keep in mind that is hilarious now, but it made me even more unsettled. The fact that Ms. Frizzle didn't even seem to give a shit about the kids gave me a bad feeling, as if she was
some sort of twisted maniac of a teacher that didn't care about the kids and could just make doppelgangers of any kid that dies on a field trip.
We never saw her concerned at all, as if something like this has happened many times. Keep in mind that this is the first episode of the show and it started out with a traumatizing event that kind of changed my outlook on this show a bit. It made me think of the dangers of taking kids on these unsafe magic trips in where they get hurt or worse, lose their lives. I know, I sound like a concerned parent, bro. What are you talking about? Alright, but it really makes you wonder if any of the parents or staff know about what Miss Frizzle is doing. Well, that sounds like an interesting concept that can be further developed at a later time or not at all. You know what? Look at the time. Moving on. Okay, so a little detour here. So y'all know this guy, right? He founded this, then made this, then that, and then sold his successful company to this creature over here. Well, in 1983, this goober named Tomlinson Hallman. Well, in 1983, this goober named Tomlinson Hallman made this snazzy logo right here and developed the company with George Lucas. Most of you should recognize this by just looking at this beautifully simplistic logo, but for those who don't, then maybe the sound that plays will give you a refresher course on how utterly terrifying seeing and hearing this play at 3 a.m. on a Saturday was. Yup, if that gave you a wave of horror-struck nostalgia, then you in fact had a childhood. And I could go into detail on the illustrious history of this logo, but that really doesn't matter when we're talking about how this scared a whole decade of kids and teens. That sound played at the beginning of every movie I watched on DVD. Alright, side note, of course not every movie, it was an exaggeration and an excuse for me to not do further research, but when it played, I cowered in fear and wondered, why the fuck is this so damn loud? Like, they did not have to make it so it broke every person's eardrums within a 20-mile radius. And the thing that made this sound so unpleasant is how it kept getting louder and more intense as it went on. The suspense always made me pee in my britches and gave me a seizure because of how scared I was. If you did not experience what it's like listening to this alone, then you have been blessed by the gods, my good sir, because dang, did this leave us petrified at a standstill like a statue. Okay, bro, what? Why did I just start rapping?
I'm stacking,
What
making
the
it happen.
It seems such a waste of time. If that's what you're all about, mama, if that's moving up, then
Ubi was an American children's TV show that aired from 2000 all the way up to the early months of 2005 and had reruns that continued until March 18th of 2013. It was made by a small production company called Little Airplane Productions, which also whipped up the likes of Wonder Pets for Nick Jr. instead of the channel that Ubi was on, which was called Noggin. And yeah, I could go into detail on the messy ins and outs on how Noggin was rebranded and built into Nick Jr., but there is already an incredible video on that which I recommend you watch if you want to learn more, so I'll leave it in the description. Alright, so Noggin was an educational entertainment television channel that had shows like The Electric Company, Degrassi, The Next Generation,
Manny Santos, my, how you've grown.
and of course Ubi. It also had an overnight program called The N, I know, ominous, that catered to older kids and teens. But our good friend Ubi's show ran through the day and started off as educational shorts in the first season, but then became 13-minute long episodes in the later half of its life. The story in each episode usually consisted of Ubi learning something with the help of Ubi's younger sister Uma, Ubi's best friend Kako, and Ubi's and Ubi and Uma's what is this nigga's name, bro? And Ubi and Uma's grandfather Grandpoo. Just as Crashbox, looking back at it now, I am really amazed by how creative it was with the visuals, and where Crashbox had more of a grand style of production and design, Ubi had more of a stripped back and simplistic style that really worked with a lot of people and made it develop a cult following and praise from other puppeteers. It was also nominated and won a lot of awards, which it wholeheartedly deserved after I rewatched some episodes for this video. Let me push up my glasses here. But if Ubi was this great, then why couldn't my nincompoop of a kid's brain see it at the time and only thought about how daunting the characters looked and how unnatural the environment was? And can you really blame me? I mean, look at Bro, for example. He is just looking into your soul with a dead expression, giving you the 1,000-yard stare. And what about Grandpoo here? He looks like he's gonna chase me like a PNG in one of those Roblox or Gmod games. Just the two hands with the glued on eyes, never blinking, always watching the viewer, made me so perturbed that I couldn't even sit through an episode and appreciate it as a show. Also, they only talked in 2 or 3 word sentences, which obviously made it more accessible to a younger audience, but to me it came across as even more abnormal. Sometimes I couldn't even sleep because I thought Ubi the sleep paralysis demon was looking through my window with his big ass beady eyes like the boiled one. It also didn't help that the show was very old and had that analog horror vibe that we see a lot nowadays. Kinda like this video. To be honest, this show is perfect for a creepypasta, scary story, or analog horror adaptation. Apart from what I've said thus far, nothing else seemed that off. Yeah, some of the sets kind of look like Backrooms levels, but it's mostly the characters that made me turn on my Lightning McQueen nightlight before going to bed. Okay, so that's all, folks. I'll try to get... Okay, so that's all. Get this thing out of here, bro. But make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below on what I can improve on. Alright, editing Javi, roll the credits. That's it, and stay up. I forgot to say that. Wow, Grandpa, that was actually amazing. Thank you, son. I worked really hard on it way back when. Yeah, I can't believe you made this in 2026. Took me a whole year to finish, but it was worth it. A bit rough around the edges, and the tape did lag and glitch a bit since it's so old. Even so, it was fantastic. Good job, Grandpa.